Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Welcome to another edition of It Takes Two, where we look at, from a psychological point of view and a Islamic philosophical point of view, scenarios and challenges that come up in marriages. This week I have with me my co-host, Sister Ruby, and this week also we have Sheikh Ahmed Hanif. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
So let's, if that's okay with yourselves, let's jump into the first scenario, the first letter that I'd like to read. This is from a individual who says, "Dear It Takes Two, my husband is an angry man. At the beginning of our courtship, he was amazing, loving, caring and attentive. Once we married, things changed. He became aggressive, controlling and difficult to please. On some occasion, he has hit me. The arguments between us will escalate from the smallest matter. On one occasion, it was because I had not prepared his food how he liked it. And I am truly frightened and unsure about what to do." Very, very difficult situation from an anonymous sister. What's the first port of call? Where do we start from? This sounds like domestic violence. How do we proceed, Sheikh?
Absolutely. Well, I think she really needs to find some kind of professional help for that relationship. You know, I think a lot of abusive relationships begin exactly like this. The man is a really sweet guy. The woman thinks this is great marriageable material. Mm-hmm. She marries him, and it's a Jekyll and Hyde type of thing. He becomes an entirely different person. And I think he is an entirely different person, because for a lot of people of men who abuse women, it is a learned behavior. You know, they either see it in the relationship between their parents, mm-hmm. all right, or they might have had some kind of negative and abusive relationship with their mothers, you know? And so they're playing this out. Before, when they were courting, that woman did not fall within that particular context.
How do you mean?
You see, the abuse takes place within the marital or family context, all right? When the man is put into that particular context, then that other Mr. Hyde
is triggered. It's triggered. Yeah.
Outside of that context, this is just a bachelor woman that he's interested in, that he's talking to, and he finds a certain interest in. That's fine. Okay?
Doesn't need to exert power. Doesn't feel the need to exert power over.
Now he gets into a different scenario. Okay, this pathology, because abusive tendencies are a pathology. Okay. That comes about from largely learned behavior that you witness among people, okay? Whether you're involved or others are involved, like your parents. Mm-hmm. Okay? You learn this behavior by being in that particular situation. So now going into that situation, this new or different or horrible person comes out. So I think, you know, you should know better than me, you know, but I think for the abuser, okay, he definitely needs some kind of psychological counseling, you know, some investigation into his past, some awareness of himself, mm-hmm. you know. The onus is upon that abuser for that to happen.
Is it the willingness? What say you, sister?
I think I would take a different approach in saying that what's paramount is the safety of the woman here. She needs to find herself in a secure environment. If she really does have those fears, even if they haven't been actualized, she needs to find some kind of safety.
He actually has, according to what she said, he has been violent towards
right.
not just aggressive, but I think
my next piece of advice would be, somebody needs to know what happens in domestic violence situations is it's a vicious circle, and what makes this fire breed is that nobody knows.
So secrecy.
And for many women, it's firstly shock that this has happened to them. What do they do? And there's lots of feelings of shame, guilt. Where will they go? Paramount, and a number will be given at the end of this program. Safety. Safety is paramount. You have to make sure you are okay. You tell somebody what is going on, even if you don't want them to act upon it, but somebody needs to know what is going on. God forbid things should escalate. You always tell somebody. It can be, you can call anonymous numbers. There's people you can contact, and as I said, we'll give numbers at the end. But before anything else, safety. I'm really saddened by this. This happens a lot. And it also happens with men as well, that they're in domestic violence situations. But I think a lot of the time for women, it takes a long time for them to process what's happened because of the shock. And where do you go? And because you're so absorbed in getting over the shock, you can't think clearly. Because what happens with these people, and I call them manipulators in a negative sense, is that the Sheikh was talking about this Jekyll and Hyde personality. You may not be getting hit every day. It might be an emotional abusive situation where something is
financial
said,
abuse, all different types of abuse
all
takes
types
place.
of things. The next day, this person may come across as the best thing since sliced bread. So you're confused. You're like, oh, maybe it's something I did. Maybe it was the environment. And a lot of these people, they always back it up with an excuse. You made me do it. Something triggered it off. It's not me. They then fall into the victim that you have to comfort them until the next time it happens. So my advice is, first and foremost, make sure you're secure, somebody knows, and then seek outside help.
Does this sister need to? Is this a thing that we would be advising her to leave this relationship, this marriage, or is it something that they just need to seek help, or is there room for?
I think before any of us answer that question, because it's different for everybody.
Each situation is unique.
I do not want to advise anybody to stay in any abusive situation. God forbid something happens. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is, in this incident, because we're not trained counsellors in this situation, and I don't want to take on the liability of something happening to somebody. But what we will say is, let's presume the sister's in a safe environment and she's analysing what's happened and what the next step is. Let's answer it from that perspective, that she's in a safe environment. Let's make that very clear. We're not promoting anyone to
I did want to clarify that, because like as a psychotherapist, I've worked with people in this type of scenario, and one of the things that I'm aware of is that in therapy you don't advise people. You help them to explore the issues and possibilities that are available to them in life in general, and gaining their own agency. But oftentimes people in violent relationships, or abusive relationships, they almost like lose. It's almost like being in a cult or something like that. They lose that capacity to really think for themselves or act in a kind of separate way from that relationship. They lose themselves in that relationship, So I just wanted to kind of explore, from maybe an Islamic point of view, is there a particular protocol? Is it approaching a sheikh or a religious institution to speak to this individual who's a husband or something like that? Because it's not a secular situation. This is a Muslim sister. So how does that play out?
Well, I mean, from an Islamic point of view, physical abuse of women is haram. Okay, it's haram to physically abuse women in particular, and anybody in general. Okay. That being said, then, it behooves the community to be able to have those structures in place to deal with that. Okay. Which could run the gamut from as extreme as treating abuse as a crime, okay, to treating abuse as something that is treatable, okay, where you can save a marriage, So it all depends upon where that abuse is on that particular continuum, you see. And so the community has to be aware that it has the choice, okay, of flexibility and trying different means by which one could eliminate the abuse and preserve the marriage, okay, or eliminate the marriage and get rid of the abuse.
Yeah.
And you find in that situation, we have some problems in our community.
A lot of the time, from a female perspective, what you will find is females do not want the marriage to dissolve. They're looking for a way to fix the situation.
In these type of situations.
In these
also?
type of situations. And it's not just for Muslims. They want the person that they fell in love with back. They don't understand. They want to help in this person's recovery because it is an illness. I think what needs to happen, because predominantly it's a male issue in our community. Yes, we do have the roles reversed. But there is a movement in Atlanta called Muslim Men Against Domestic Violence, and it's led by the youths. And it's educating men, and I'm not giving excuses for it, about triggers, about things that have happened to them psychologically, about environmental factors. You know, they may have had a really stressful time at work. The only person that they can take it out on is the weakest person or the person who's next to them, which would be their spouse. We need education from a young age. We're in an environment where violence is everywhere and it can seep in. It's in music, it's in video games. I'm not
Popular
justifying
culture
it,
is saturated with violence.
but I think it needs to come from our sheikhs, and it needs to feed down into our youths, and it also needs to go into the women as well, because we have women who do this.
Why does it need to come from our sheikhs?
Because let's just be honest, a lot of time in our community, they are the ones that we look up to. They're the celebrities, they're the knowledge, they're the people that a lot of the youth look up to and think, oh, if he's doing it, then I'll do it. They have a sense of duty. I think, you know, when we don't have our imam present physically that we can all see, they have a duty, our scholars, to educate the community and try and help where possible to make our community better with whatever incidences they have. Another situation is, if, say, an imam is brought to the sheikh's attention, it's very difficult and awkward to get the brother into the office or wherever to have a discussion. That quite likely is going to cause some repercussions at home. That you've stepped outside the marriage and involved strangers in. This happens a lot. And that's why it's so shameful and embarrassing for women, and they keep it silent because they're worried about the repercussions. It really is a disease, not just in our community. And again, with everything, I think it starts with education. But what's also interesting is there isn't a lot of support from sisters, because people don't know how to deal with this situation. Imagine your friend comes and tells you, or your sister, that they're being hit by somebody. You don't know what to do with that information.
Oh, I know what to do with that information.
Well, most people do. No, like most people don't.
I know what to do with that information already.
Most people don't.
But no, I take
Well,
what you mean.
You're not speaking as a psychotherapist.
No.
You know that
You're speaking like a boxer.
it's interesting.
There's a boxer in me coming out.
Someone we know in our family in the Middle East, his sister was being abused by her husband, and she didn't tell him, but he had the inklings. They were very close. And I'm not recommending this approach, but one day he invited them for dinner, and he opened the door and he said, "Assalamu alaikum," and he boxed this brother in the face. And he said, "Now that I've done what you did to my sister, come in, there's no hard feelings." Never happened again. But it's different strokes for different folks. So it's like, now that we're equal, come and sit down.
Thank you for that piece of advice.
I'm not advising that at all, but what I'm saying is a lot of the time it's very difficult to know where to go. And with sisters, once somebody has fed that information to you, I don't know where to go. Are you telling me that because you just want someone to talk to? Do you want me to help? How am I meant to help you?
Interject here. If that abusive husband knows that wife of his that he abuses or would like to abuse has brothers, fathers, uncles, a family,
A community,
that will act in her defense, okay, he will be less persuaded.
He'll be
restrained from being like this, okay? One of the problems is that in Western society, societies tend to become, families become isolated.
Isolation.
People don't want to get involved in your family business. That's one.
Isn't that the role of abusers, or they actually don't hang out with sister souls. They're
Yes,
controlling and they
exactly.
siphon the person off.
They separate you from your community.
Yes, from your family,
so it
your
makes you
community,
more
your friends.
vulnerable.
Yes.
All right. Also, you find right in the Muslim community, people tending to abuse this idea that the man now is taking the role of the father. He's the biggest authority, and now this man started telling her, "Don't be in touch with your family.
Yeah, he
I'm
can't
the
come
authority in
over.
your life now. I want you here with the kids." What should happen is red lights should start going off in this woman's head. Okay? We are into the phase 1, isolation. Phase 2, abuse.
But it
You see?
happens so subtly, Sheikh. So you're in the situation, as I was saying, the processing time, it's so weird. Imagine that you're really in love with this person. I hate using the word love, but you want to make this marriage work, etc. Everyone in the community knows you're together, and then this happens, and it takes you by shock, and you're hoping. A lot of sisters are praying it away, that it goes away, and it starts off subtly. It's not always with a slap. It's a comment. It's something about your integrity. It's really under the skin until it flares up, and you don't see it coming. So when you're in the situation, you're cooking dinner and you get a slap, you're just thinking, let me just get through cooking dinner. Maybe after dinner he'll calm down until the next time it happens. So the signs aren't normally there. When a lot of the times when we're married, we do have a distance between our families and friends because some of our friends aren't married. Our responsibilities now change. So they can't relate to what you mean you have to be home by this time. Oh, because you haven't cooked dinner. That's so ridiculous what's happened to you. So you don't see the gradual changes that's happening.
The gradual. What about, just to flip it just for a moment, for brothers, because men tend to fall in the minority of victims of domestic abuse, let's put it that way, but they do exist. So what about for a Muslim brother that's in an abusive relationship? It might not be physical, but is there somewhere for them to go and talk? Yeah, psychological, emotional. Is there somewhere for them to go and talk? Is it something that brothers would be able to even feel like they could raise with a sheikh or somebody to get advice or to get help? Because it'd be so embarrassing. I mean, how could I admit to being bullied by my wife? How does that play out?
Yeah, I mean, you'd find that it's like the iceberg. A large majority of cases like these will go unreported. Because men would be very, embarrassed to talk about themselves being emotionally or physically abused by their wives, right? But this is why I think, education in the community is extremely important. Belonging to a healthy Muslim community, where you have ulama, sheikhs, who are well educated in these matters, become very important, where they are approachable.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, for a lot of sheikhs, they are seen in a kind of up on a pedestal, alienated type of a thing, which does not encourage, heart-to-heart communication. You see, and it becomes problematic. But clearly, what I think the first thing that we need is in our community to open this discourse, to talk about domestic abuse on all levels, spousal domestic abuse of elderly parents.
Yes, very common.
The violent and other types, sexual abuse and violent abuse of children. Things like this. We need to talk about these things. Because people don't know how to process this when it happens to them. You see, all of the discussions in the Sunday classes and so forth didn't touch upon that. You didn't have
life skill lessons.
Life skills,
emotional intelligence things. And emotional.
None of these things were talked about. You see, and most likely the sheikh who is in charge of the community, his head is in the sand. Okay, especially if he's an import from India, to speak to a homogeneous ethnic community, right? They don't talk about abuse and these types of things.
Or
Right.
it's left for the ladies to discuss it and the men don't discuss it. I think what's sad is that
That's not acceptable.
it's not acceptable and it's not okay. This religion is about mercy. And if you don't have mercy amongst each other as spouses, there's a problem, a fundamental flaw, and it needs to be addressed. I agree at a young age, and I think men need to have the discussion with men as well. What are the triggers? Why are you so
Yes.
angry? Women, be careful with your words. You know, be careful. A lot of, in certain cultures, they're very physical, the women, because they want a reaction. They'll be in your face. I'm not saying they deserve to be hit or anything, but not
There's a
every
context to the reactions.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
People, you know, have their own red flags. We need to discuss, you know, what happened to compassion, mercy, and humanity. We're adults. Why are we acting like animals? If you can't get your point across, is a fist going to do it? But I think we need to talk about it, definitely.
Is there something that people can do? Well, mainly sisters seem to be falling the victims of these type of scenarios. Is there something that people can do before they get married? Married, should I say? Are there signs and symptoms that we're looking for with people like this? We talk about the Jekyll and Hyde, but is it as much as you can know about somebody before you get married to them? Is there a certain type of investigation, certain type of inquiry, or things that people need to not be embarrassed to try and venture into to protect themselves in advance?
Sisters need to be able to, one, have self-esteem, and it's a community issue, it's a school issue, it's a holistic approach. Second issue is they need to be able to identify control. A lot of people get Islam and this idea of control confused or use it as a good guise to do whatever they want. It can start off very small. So if you're from a household and your father has never forced anything upon you, for example, hijab, you know you have to do it, but he's never forced it down your throat. You're getting married to somebody who knows you didn't wear hijab. Then as soon as you're engaged, he's interrogating you in the room for 3 hours as to, you're not doing this, you're disrespecting me. Do you see the pattern, the control? Mm-hmm. This is what you need sisters need education on what to spot. Someone who wants to change you for their own benefit, and a lot of the time sisters comply because they're the peace creators. A lot of the time, not all the time. You start losing your identity. We need to identify to sisters what is control, what is compassion, and what is manipulation. And sisters also need to learn when to step back, to choose their arguments wisely, and how to get their thoughts across. I don't have the answers, but I think we really need a holistic approach because there's something we're missing.
Just to bring you in, Sheikh, quickly, what can we do for our young brothers in terms of mentoring or raising awareness? Because we have a lot of Islamic education, a lot of public speakers and educators in the community, but oftentimes it seems to be around certain favourite subjects. And how do we create a social revolution in thought to be able to make issues like this not taboo or one-off seminars, but this is something that is like an integral part of our community activities in terms of raising awareness and educating? How do we create this environment?
I think we need to first and foremost revisit our idea of community, because I would venture to say we do not have an idea of community. Our idea of community is a sort of a default model, where we think of community, for example, in terms of an ethnic subgroup in the Muslim population. Okay, we think of ourselves maybe fundamentally as Persian, or fundamentally as Iraqi, fundamentally as Pakistani, and we continue to operate in that particular orbit, you see. And in these communities, there are things that are not discussed, for example. Okay, one example of things that are not discussed in many of these traditional Muslim communities is spousal abuse. We don't discuss this, you see. Mm-hmm. I think we need to change this idea of community as one that encourages healthy relationships and healthy behavior, right? You know, when the Holy Quran talks about Allah creating us as a middle community, you know, to exalt what is right and forbid what is wrong. Okay? It indicates a healthy community, you see? And so within a healthy community, the older generation tends to mentor the younger generation. When I say older generation, I don't mean older people and younger people. I mean generation or age groups, you know.
Yeah.
For example, 20-year-olds, you know, or people in their 20s mentor those in their teens. People in their 30s mentor those who are in their 20s. People in their 40s mentor those who are in their 30s. You know, this is how society grows. This is how society remains integrated. You see, the older group takes responsibility for acculturating the younger group into healthy behavior.
Inshallah.
You see?
Inshallah.
And I think this is something that we can do right here in this society, because sooner or later our ethnicity becomes secondary. You know, you are more British than you are Iraqi. You're more British than you are Pakistani, for example. All right?
Interesting.
You know, and therefore, as a Pakistani or as a young Pakistani born in this country, or a young Iraqi born in this country, we realize that we have much, much more in common than if we were born in Pakistan and in Iraq in two separate countries.
Interesting. Just we can carry this on after the break, but I just want to stop for a brief break, and we hope to see you on the other side. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Welcome back to It Takes Two. Just before the break, Sister Ruby, you was just about to interject and make a really important point.
Just 2 points that came into my head. For the people that are the abusers, I don't think it's helpful that the community ostracizes them, because they're going to remarry, and I think it's good that we try and accommodate them in changing their behavior and helping them, because these people are going to go on to other people. The second point is, what happens is there's a domino effect. When you have a sister who's been in an abusive relationship, come out, remarries, she's now taking that baggage onto another relationship, and there's scars and stuff that she needs to deal with, which has an implication on the community, because we still have the sister, we still have the brother with these issues. God forbid there's children involved. So there's so many things to think about, but we need to quickly wake up and address this issue quickly.
So we definitely need some healing. But like you mentioned, there will be a number or some information given out at the end so that the sister can actually contact a agency, inshallah. So if it's okay, we can go on to the second letter. This is quite an extensive letter by a brother. It says, "It takes two. I am unmarried and hopefully soon to be. I have been engaged for 2 years now. My fiancée is a God-fearing and loving, soft woman. When we first met, she was very shy at best, is the best way to describe her, like a flower. However, as time has gone on, I have noticed that in certain situations, her character changes. It's almost as if she has the ability to flip from one extreme to the other. One side of her is calm and soft, and the other side is fearsome and enraged. I can only equate this anger to the fact that she had had a turbulent upbringing. Her rage has never been directed towards me. However, I have concerns that this may change once we are married. What would you advise me in terms of the best approach to help her to control her anger? We have tried anger management and holistic therapy. How do we address this, Sheikh, or some of the issues that come out of this? How do we
Well,
address
importantly,
this?
I think from what she's...
the brother Muhammad, he's in quotes.
What the brother is saying, she is aware of this anger issue, because they've tried anger management.
Yeah.
Right. So she's.
That's half of the challenge.
Yes.
That she recognizes the issue.
Yeah. So I think they're on the right track. I think they're on the right track. You know, I think with respect to a problem, the first thing that is necessary to solving a problem is being aware that problem exists. You know. If it is not working, then I think it is important for him to try other avenues. Mm-hmm. You know, And I get the impression that it's not working, but we don't know how long it has been going on for example.
Yeah.
Maybe he might be too much in a rush. It is quite possible. But I think he's on the right track.
Are there specific, or could you talk about the specific methodologies that sometimes are employed Islamically in terms of addressing anger, whether there's certain ayat to read or certain particular Islamic practices?
Well, by and large, most of the hadith deal with the subjective, how you deal with anger subjectively, your own anger. Right? Which basically, champions the do less type of approach. So they have a hadith by the Holy Prophet, a very famous hadith by the Holy Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wa alihi, where he says, if you're angry and you're standing, sit. And if you are sitting and you're still angry, lie down. What it means is to take a passive approach. Like when you're angry, you don't speak when you're angry, because you might say something that you will regret later. You don't act when you're angry, because you might do something that you might regret later. Okay? Anger compromises your moral judgment. And this is why you should not act in anger. And I think this fundamental principle is something that, for example, this brother's wife should
Fiancée, yeah.
Right? Where now it becomes more an autonomous type of behavior, where she is aware of this, and therefore she herself can try to impose upon herself this fundamental rule, by non-action when you're angry, until your anger subsides, and then you can act.
This is quite an unusual situation where it's as unusual as in public to sisters having anger issues.
It's not unusual. It's just not talked about.
That's my point. Reasons are they common reasons? You put the weight of the whole female gender on your shoulders, but
so many
feminine feedback.
So many issues: frustration, childhood, expectations, some kind of deficiency that they've had. So many reasons. I have to commend the brother for, he's just engaged and willing to put in all this effort. That's such a blessing in itself, that he's committed to the relationship. If he was a friend or someone I knew personally, I wouldn't rush into getting married until the situation's rectified. And when I mean rectified, there's been some positive proof that this behaviour has changed. It's not the person has said the behaviour has changed, but by actions. Because that is abusive to me, that you could flip in any minute over anything. God forbid it should be in public. He's going to be embarrassed in front of his peers, etc. How is that helpful? And it's not okay to say, I have an affliction, so I'll continue the behaviour. The fact that anger management hasn't worked suggests to me there's a deeper underlying issue. So maybe there needs to be some intensive therapy. You're the professional here with that one. But again, let's not use that as an excuse. You're an adult, have some self-control, work on the issues that you think you need to, and this is your issue. It's not his issue. He might be triggering something, poor man. Maybe the sister sees something in him and she goes mental. It happens.
He has mentioned that, sorry to cut you, just say he has mentioned that it hasn't been towards her. He's just observed this difference between night and day between them. But he's worried. That's what his worry is, that when they get married, for some reason, maybe because they're going to be in closer proximity or something of this nature, that he's worried can be directed at him.
If she has children, is that going to set her off hormonally? How do we know what's going to happen? I think what the brother is saying, he has genuine concerns, and the fact that he's written in and voiced them, there's some underlying issues that need to be worked on. He needs to decide, I'm sorry, is this relationship worth all that effort? If she's exhibiting this behaviour now, quite freely, not even married, I'm a bit concerned with what she's going to show later. I mean, it's so early on. This should be your best time. This should be your honeymoon period. And the poor brother's concerned of what might happen. I would say slow your roll and get some help.
But she's still our sister. She still needs to, even if she doesn't, even this brother could say, you know what, it's not worth it. I'm going to walk away. But we still have a extremely angry young sister.
Well, I mean, look, I don't see it as a huge problem for him because he mentioned that she doesn't get angry with him.
Well,
Yet.
at least not yet.
Not
Yeah,
yet.
at least not yet.
Yeah.
It means that she gets angry for the different situations. It's very important to know what situations she gets angry in.
Well, that's problematic because maybe she doesn't know. Something could trigger something else.
Yeah, but an observation on his part can recognize patterns of behavior.
Well, he can assist, you mean? He can assist.
But
as
that might be a
observer.
risk. Why put yourself in that situation?
No, he's with her. He's seeing her, right?
Yeah,
and he
yeah.
sees her blowing up in certain situations, right? For example, I don't know, she might be blowing up, let's say, being, not treated with the respect that she thinks she deserves at a cashier, for example. You know what I mean?
That sounds like she's got mental health issues. I'd be concerned again.
Well, no, I mean,
She
everybody.
may well do, but still,
Yeah.
regardless, they still
Everybody-
need to be
But it
addressed.
needs to be worked
But it
upon.
needs to be addressed.
Everybody has red buttons, right? What I'm saying is,
We all have triggers, yeah?
yes, we all have triggers, right? And I think maybe her trigger is a bit too sensitive, but I think you can establish patterns, okay? At any rate, this is what a therapist can do, right? In talking with this person, to be able to identify patterns, and then from those patterns, you can establish,
Well, I have concerns
causes.
about that comment, respectfully, because put yourself in another situation where there's a domestic violence situation and you would be saying, look for patterns and triggers. This could possibly lead to that type of situation, God forbid. What I'm saying is I think the sister should take full control of her actions. I think she needs some independent help herself, and then later maybe some couple therapy, but she obviously has an issue.
Now, before couple therapy, it would look like the
She
sister
needs
needs
some
to
individual help.
She needs some individual stuff.
If the brother
right?
mentioned
Yeah.
anger management is one thing, one thing in itself, and also holistic therapy is kind of one thing in itself. But it sounds like she may benefit from just some old-fashioned, just one-to-one counselling.
Yeah.
Because oftentimes anger is not the
And you know
is not
what
the issue
could be-
itself.
You know what could be happening? There's some sisters who think this type of behaviour is cute. It makes the guy more attractive, like, oh, I'm in a bad mood, you're going to come and chase after me, or you're going to ask me what's wrong. It's attention-seeking behaviour. We could have that going on. We just don't know. It's bad manners, bad akhlaq, and bad conduct is not cute, and it can't be tolerated. I don't care if it comes from the male or female. There's an issue, you need to address it. You're adults. Inshallah, we hope that you get the appropriate help.
Inshallah. Would we say the same thing if this were a sister saying, I've got a fiance, he's never directed his anger towards me, but I've seen him blow up, I've seen him flip
I would
out.
say exactly the same thing as I did in previously. You have warning signals. Don't wait for something to happen. Allah's given you common sense and a brain. Use it. Don't wait for a disaster to happen. If you're concerned about something, nip it in the bud. Don't wait for a fire to happen. I'd give the exact advice as I've given to the brother. Obviously, you have attachments to the person, you care about them, but right now this is an issue that needs to be addressed.
Does he need to speak to her family about it? He says that he thinks it's to do, I mean, Allah knows best why he's saying he thinks it's something to do with a turbulent childhood. Would it be of any gain if he cares about this young lady who seems to be the object of his affections to maybe speak to her family about it to find out more, to get an understanding?
I think it helps, right? I think it helps, but I think you have to be very careful how you approach your family on this. Families tend to draw the wagons together and, clam up when, it might indicate that they might be responsible.
Okay.
Right?
Yes.
For that problem in terms of behavior and that type of thing, right? So I'd be very, very careful about doing.
You could be
this.
digging up a hornet's nest,
Yes.
basically. Yeah.
And I'm sure, as a therapist, for example, what you would probably spend more time doing is probing them, the actual client, the actual patient, right?
Indeed,
and
indeed.
exploring their own family background from their point of view, from
Their
from
perspective.
their own subjective experience.
Yeah,
Where
yeah.
that's very important.
But I would also inform the family in a subtle way that there's an issue here, because maybe that they can approach something, maybe they can highlight something. It's so early on in the relationship. If they have a feeling and they care about, both the couple, it's in their vested interest to do something about it and say, look, what's going on? As you said, the reverse could happen, but I would say, look, she's very angry. And I think most parents who would hear that would say, well, what happened? What's going on? Why? You're meant to be happy. What's going on?
Interesting. Sheikh, what about from a Islamic point of view, a sort of theological point of view? If she were to have a sort of psychological or emotional disorder or problem, what level of responsibility does the individual have in terms of their acting out? So somebody's gone through some negative issues in the past. So I'll give you a scenario. So individuals had a turbulent upbringing. They've got this real anger problem, so they may flare up, use abusive language or be aggressive, or but very un-Islamic. How much responsibility do they hold in relation to, they kind of gain that problem?
Or revealing it, do you mean?
No, acting out. So I'm just saying, imaginary person, they've had a very turbulent upbringing, which wasn't their doing, but the environment they grew up, parental environment they grew up in, they were exposed to certain things, so they now have a psychological condition, an anger issue, for example. When they act out, all right, being abusive may be haram, but like, how much responsibility do they, in terms of the day of judgment, in terms of accountability?
Yes.
That's the word I'm looking for. Accountability.
They have their responsibility as long as they know what is right and what is wrong.
And they're of sound mind.
And they have sound mind. Okay, they should be able to look at their own behavior, or their own problematic behavior, and evaluate it and say this is not right. Okay, and therefore, what they should do from an Islamic point of view is to now bring in the use of their will. The intellect was already employed in evaluating the situation. The fundamental reason for the existence of the intellect is to be able to distinguish between that which is right and that which is wrong, which is good and that which is bad. There's a fundamental reason for the intellect. Okay? Once that person looks at that, at his or her behavior, and sees that behavior from an intellectual point of view, which is of course helped by the Quran, the Sunnah, the sayings of the Prophet, and so forth, that this is bad, then now they must use their will to change that behavior. Okay? So that means you have to be very sensitive to yourself. That whenever the scenario that comes, that touches your red button, whenever you see that scenario, you know that they could push that red button could be pushed. And this is where you say, I'm not going to let that red button be pushed. I'm going to leave that scenario, for example. I'll change that scenario, or I'll have a different perspective on that scenario. Okay? So yes, part of the responsibility is theirs for their actions, but also part of the responsibility would be for the society, the community, the parents, or whatever, that created that negative consequence, that negative state in the soul of that person, for them to be sort of emotionally impelled to do that. There's a very interesting saying by the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, talking about sunnat. All right, sunnah.
Okay.
And sunnah meaning, in this case, in the generic sense, not the practice of the Prophet and the A'immah, alayhim salam, but any practice that you initiate, right, that other people follow you after that. Okay? That's what he's talking. And he says, a person who establishes a good sunnah means a good behavior, all right, that other people follow after him. He will get the reward of initiating that good behavior, plus a reward for every time a person follows that behavior.
MashaAllah.
Okay? And a person who starts a bad sunnah, okay? For example, a kid grows up in a house where he sees his dad abusing his mom, okay? That person will be punished for that action as well as share in the punishment or get his own punishment from those people who after that have learned from that bad sunnah and implement that. You see? So it is very, very important for us to establish good relationships, right? And it's very, very important for us to be cognizant of the fact that despite the fact that we are following this bad sunnah because we were brought up in it or whatever.
Okay. I see
All right?
Yes.
That we are going to pay for this as well as the parents or the family or whatever that put this in our heads.
So regardless,
So you
there's
don't
responsibility.
escape.
There's responsibility.
Yeah, as long as you're aware of right and wrong, right, and you have a responsibility to do right, you know, then you have to act upon that, even if it means acting against yourself. Right? You know, Allah says in the Holy Quran that He describes the mu'mineen as those who stand up for justice, even against themselves. Meaning, you might have a tendency to be unjust, right? But as trying to be just, you act against your unjust impulses, you know, to be just.
I think it's promising that they're still working at it, and I'm hoping both families are involved. That's a positive sign in itself, but I wouldn't rush into getting married until situations.
I would agree that there needs to be things need to be resolved before they take that big lifetime commitment, because I mean, even something that's mentioned that the sister is like a flower and like a storm, but it seems he mentions in a way that, you know, she can flip. So there may be even some chemical imbalance or something, you know, something a bit deeper than just maybe growing up in a challenging environment. So this is no joking matter. But I think that, I mean, ultimately the responsibility would be with the sister. So his best thing is he can give her advice, he can bring things to her attention, but ultimately she has to look for counselling, look for therapy, make the effort.
Yeah.
And especially, it seems like Alon knows best, that he seems like a good brother to be willing to put that time and effort in, and surely somebody like that is worth bettering yourself for, I would say. So, yeah. But this does happen with sisters. I've heard from brothers that, you know, they're in the middle of the store, they're buying their daughter something, and the wife flips out and throws a tantrum, and it's embarrassing. It's like, well, what's happened? And we're like, well, didn't you have signs of this before? It's a bit too late, you know, to try and fix things now. It's never too late, but you should have maybe. It's
a contrast from the first scenario where the brother presented as the kind of Jekyll and Hyde, so he was a good guy. He basically sent like almost like his personality wasn't him, but it was a representative, somebody to act on his, you know, to create an impression. But then the behind closed door, the other sides come out. In this scenario, I guess this brother has seen both sides before he's
I think, you know, when it's like going to market or going to meet someone for the first time, put your best foot forward. After a time, it's difficult to continue that persona without naturally being yourself. So he's probably seen things along the way.
He's seen her flip out.
Exactly, which is unfortunate, really is. But we wish him the best of luck, inshallah.
Inshallah. Any last words, Share?
It's a great topic.
And yourself, any closing words but in terms of both scenarios or just in general?
I think have some self-worth, know yourselves, be honest with yourselves and others as to where your flaws are, and, you know, be prepared to have a voice. It's okay Islamically to have a voice. It's okay to work on yourselves. Just, you know, keep Allah in mind at every situation, and like I keep saying, it's not about men versus females or vice versa. We all have our idiosyncrasies and, you know, jihads that we have, you know, but it's about coming together and, you know, our community growing. And I think education, parents, alims, sheikhs, and I think it's good for males and females to, like we're having, an open discussion, because there's things that we've highlighted in the conversation that I wasn't aware of. You hear it through the grapevine, but makes you think about, you know, your own sisters in a different light. And I hope it's been beneficial for you guys as well.
Maybe it's time. Maybe it's about that time.
Especially when we talk about
development.
male-female issues.
Yeah.
Okay, so women need to hear from men
What
you
it's
know.
like, how they interpret certain
exactly.
things, and what our signals are, and what triggers us.
There may be some pockets of resistance. Well, there's always going to be resistance to change. If this is something sort of new, it's not been done before necessarily in this society as Muslims, but there may be some resistance. Maybe there's some people that are just afraid of where it could go.
Well, their system hasn't been working, let's face it. Hiding things, it's not working. People are going to find out information in other ways, and we don't know what their agendas are. So that isn't working, and I think if that works for them, there's a lot of people it hasn't worked for. So we need to be open about it. If they don't want to take part, silently move aside and let somebody do some good. I think this ownership of we've done it this way for so long, you don't change a good thing. It's not progressive.
Wow. So there you have it. Sister Ruby says it's
Again.
time for change, and Sheikh concurs, it would seem. It's time for change. And we thank you for staying for the duration of the episode, and just wanted to make an important point that you should not allow yourself to remain in an abusive relationship and feel ashamed and feel that you have done some that you were the one at fault, and that the best thing that you can do is seek professional advice, inshallah. So until next time, stay safe. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.